that there is an ongoing challenge and opportunity. And I think that is not just about COVID. It's about the fact that we are going to have a whole slew of new vaccines, injectables, that are going to deal with some of the worst diseases in the world, that give us the opportunity to make big changes in the health of the world. Because, when it's all said and done, it was still a pretty remarkable operation. And by the way, CEPI did a fantastic job. You guys deserve a lot of congratulations for it. But so I think it's around things like, how do you make sure you get the right scientific cooperation and the cooperation between the regulatory authorities, so in the future you can clear things much faster? I think there's a huge impetus now for a national digital infrastructure. Digitization in healthcare is, I think, one of the great game changers. We should be helping countries to develop a national digital infrastructure, which they will need with these new vaccines. And then, finally, it's also about showing people and showing the political leadership that you can make a positive difference to your healthcare system by adopting these measures, because they've got an impact beyond any particular disease or pandemic. So I think if you want to keep the political focus, and I agree it's vital that you do, you've got to show people that this is a continuing issue, right? It's not a future issue, it's here and now. It's got a broad set of implications, and there are a set of solutions that COVID has taught us, arising out of the challenges of COVID, to which, if we apply the right political will, we can make our healthcare systems better, not just for pandemic and disease, but more generally for the health of the population. If you do that, they'll think there are votes in it, and if there are votes in it, they'll focus. And I also think this issue to do with the technology and the digital infrastructure, I just want to emphasize how important I think that is, because in the end, you need the data. You need to know who's been vaccinated and who hasn't been. Some of the vaccines that will come on down the line will be multiple. There'll be multiple shots. So you've got to have, for reasons to do with the healthcare more generally, but certainly for a pandemic or for vaccines, you've got to have a proper digital infrastructure. And many countries don't have that. In fact, most countries don't have that. So again, you've got to say, okay, who are the people that can make this happen? How do you get the right partnerships in place? So my view is, this is what I'm arguing with that should happen in the G20 particularly, I think, which is, G7 is an important forum, but the G20 is the broader forum, is you've got to work out what is it that you want to achieve in order to make sure that any future pandemic is properly handled, and what are the partnerships that you're going to create in order to ensure that the answers you get are the right answers. And then you're going to have the mechanisms of implementation. And those mechanisms will be partly through the formal institutions that you have, like the WTO, but they'll also be through organizations like yours, which I think have many advantages, because they don't get landed with the same bureaucracy and, frankly, small p politics around them. So I think that's what we need to do. But if you want the politicians to focus on a plan, I promise you it's got to be because they think in the next few years, not in the broad future, it's going to matter to them to have that plan.
Let me just inject a comment of my own. You raised the importance of the digital infrastructure. And we saw in countries that had good digital infrastructure, Israel, for example, with its ability to assess the efficacy and effectiveness of the Pfizer and other vaccines. The UK, where the National Health System allowed very rapid evaluations of the efficacy of different kinds of approaches. They made disproportionate contributions to our understanding of COVID and to the delivery of improved clinical care when we were learning really, really rapidly.
Right, one other thing, by the way, is genomic sequencing, I think. Yep. How do we establish the right network of that? And how do we make sure that if you are discovering things in a country because they're doing a lot of genomic sequencing, for example, like the South Africans did, you don't end up having that country feel they've got a problem because they've discovered a new variant. I think there's sort of unforgivable politics and forgivable politics. The unforgivable politics is turning a public health issue into a political issue. I remember at the beginning of the at the onset of COVID, people saying, well, what do you think of the politics of COVID? How serious is this disease? And I was like, well, you asked me about the politics of the disease. I mean, it's a disease. I don't know. You go and ask someone who knows. So what's unforgivable is turning things like whether you wear a face mask or not into a political issue.